Hello, hello, and welcome back to Shelf Talks, the podcast where we dive deep into the journeys of female founders bringing their product-based businesses to retail shelves. I'm your host, Roberta, and today is going to be a solo episode. This is actually, I think, really important conversation. I want to talk about the local advantage. I want to talk about why it's important to start off in local stores when you're building your brand and getting out into retail brick and mortar versus going directly to mass. So I don't want to say this is for everybody because I know that there's those opportunities that come up where maybe you're not fully ready to go to mass retail, but the opportunity presents itself, right? And many times as founders, you say yes, and then you figure it out. That's great. A lot of people have, of course, been successful going that direction. But I want to just give you the 10 reasons why going to local first can be at your advantage, actually help you win later down the line when you do have the opportunity to go into mass retailers. So, number one, the advantage of going to local stores is lower risk. So, local stores typically require smaller order quantities, making it easier for you to handle your inventory and your cash flow. And this is something you want to move slowly with. If you're selling D2C and you're having those, daily sales from consumers and you're doing that one-to-one relationship, when you are going to retail stores, your orders will be much larger than that. And especially if you're going into mass. So if you think about going into a grocery store that has, locations all across the country, your initial order could be 50,000 units, 100,000 units. That may be a drastic change from what you're delivering today on a daily or even monthly basis. Starting off local gives you the opportunity to have bigger quantities than what you typically deliver on a daily basis, but not as large for you to potentially, make misses and when it comes to delivering on time, having challenges being able to navigate both your D2C model as well as the store. And it helps you to build up in a slower pace. So just the risk factor alone and really taking your time to understand the operations, to understand what your cash flow is going to look like. Because when it comes to retail brick and mortar, although you're going to get paid for that whole order, say, for example, you have 10 local stores that you're delivering to, they're going to pay you, of course, for all of the inventory that you're delivering, but they may not pay you that same day of that delivery. You may have to wait 30 days, and in some cases, 60 days from that delivery point for you to get paid. So it's great for you to understand kind of what that cadence looks like and how you're going to be able to manage your inventory flow, coupled with when you're going to be receiving the dollars that are supporting that inventory. So number one, just a lower risk. And everybody loves a lower risk. I don't know if everybody does because entrepreneurs like to take risks, but this is one that you may want to just have a little bit lower risk on. Number two, faster feedback. So it's great when you're in local stores because, especially when you're in local stores of where you live, because you can go and visit those stores, right? You can go out there to your customers, you can get on the selling floor, ask questions, see what they're purchasing, ask them maybe why they're purchasing yours or why they're not purchasing yours, get a little feedback on the packaging. Price is another thing that you can ask questions about. So it gives a really great platform for you to get a little bit more information from your consumers in a real-time manner versus sending surveys where your customers are all online. And then you get that real connection with consumers as well. So faster feedback is going to help you to scale faster, to adjust your packaging, adjust your pricing. I think too, that feedback that you're gaining from your consumers, it's easier to make those changes if necessary when it comes to delivering to a smaller footprint than if you were to be in stores all across the country. For example, if you had your product on shelf, you were out talking to consumers, getting their feedback. Maybe you had a beauty brand and one of the key factors in why people were purchasing your product was because it was lacking a certain ingredient that maybe a lot of competitive items had, but a lot of consumers were looking for products that didn't have that. And you didn't have it on your packaging. That may be something that you want to add. But if you were in stores all across the country, the cost that is associated with you having to make that transition is vastly greater than what it would be if you were in just a number of stores that you could easily change to. Or for example, say you delivered your packaging and your product and it was leaking because you used the wrong glassware or you used the wrong packaging type. That could be something, again, of course, it's a disaster for those local stores, but wouldn't you rather have those changes made quickly to address 10 stores versus 2,000 stores. So just a really good place to understand feedback, be able to make the changes, and be able to make them less costly than you would if you were in a bigger footprint. Number three, community support. So local retailers often love highlighting indie and small brands. That's going to build loyalty. That's going to build word of mouth. Maybe you have the opportunity to be on an end cap of like local brands, and you can go and utilize that platform to support people buying in your community. So just a great way for you to build community, to start to get consumers aware of your brand in the city that you're in. And one thing one of our past guests talked about was the fact that, you think, oh, I want to conquer the entire United States and have it in all stores. But you got to remember how many people are in your city, in your state. Like there's such a vast amount of consumers that can become loyalists right where you are. And it's okay to start there. Number four, easier relationship building. When it comes to local, you have the opportunity to really get to know the store manager, the store associates, and teach them about your brand, tell them about your brand, give them samples, and have them become advocates for your product. That's really hard to do when you are in stores all across the country. Of course, you can go on road shows, you can visit stores when you have the ability to and when you have the funds to. But having that direct relationship where you can pop in and say, what's going on? What are people talking about my product? Hope you loved it. Did you have any feedback? Having that relationship, or it's going to get them excited. It's going to get them to talk about your product when consumers are coming in the store. Say, for example, you had a ketchup brand, right? And associate was filling the shelves and a customer was like, what ketchup should I buy today? And they can give that suggestion of yours because you're top of mind because you've been visiting that store. So you want to think about that relationship building. You have opportunity in local to have relationship building with customers, but even more importantly, or equally as important, having that relationship with the store managers and the associates that work in the store. What number am I on? Number five, brand credibility. So being on shelves in your local market gives you brand legitimacy that you can leverage in future retail pitches. So just again, starting off in local is going to start to get your brand name out there. You're going to start to grow. You're going to start to have customers recognize your brands, your logos, and start to have repeat purchase. That brand credibility is going to give you the ability when you're pitching to larger retailers to talk about it and to talk about the growth of your brand. Hey, I started off in D2C in 2024. I grew to 10 local stores in 2025. Year over year, that increase was X. And that really shows that you're building brand growth, you're building brand awareness, and you're, of course, most importantly, when it comes to buyers, building sales. Number six, this is an important one, I think, test and learn. So you can really experiment with things like promotions, displays, messaging, and really a low pressure environment. So this is your time to really test out all of those cool and creative ideas that you have and that you've been dreaming of doing when you're on retail shelves, but again, in a less riskier way. So utilizing all of those things and figuring out like what works, what doesn't work. I have this display. I thought it was going to be great, but then when I was in stores asking consumers, they thought that I didn't have the three key points that represent my brand on it, or they didn't understand what I meant when I put, I don't know, world's best coffee, right? It gives you the ability to really test, to learn, to iterate, and then to really show up in a way that's super meaningful to consumers that are going to translate into them purchasing. So use that time. What are the promotions that you think are going to be drivers? I will say, one thing that I think is a great thing to test when it comes to promotions is a lot of times the promotions that you have on your D2C platform are not the same promotions that are going to resonate with your consumers once they're in retail stores. Online, maybe you sell a lot of bundles, and that may not necessarily be the case when it comes to local stores, because there is a big difference in regards to consumers that shop online versus web. Consumers that shop online, a lot of them already have a mindset of bundle purchase, right? They're buying in excess in order to support their regimen over a longer period of time. When you are shopping a retail store, it's more exploratory, right? And you're shopping retailer in a more frequent time period. So maybe online, your big promotion that always drives incremental sales is buy two, get one. But in stores, especially at the early onset, when people are just looking to trial your product, buy two, get one may not be the mode in which really generates and drives performance. Maybe it's a singular promotion of 20% off, right? Or 30% off, or maybe buy one, get one free. So you want to test out those promotions, understand what the differentiators are between what's happening on your online platform, or even in what's happening on your online platform versus what's happening when it comes to a brick and mortar store. Also, I think it's important to understand your packaging when it comes to those stores. What you sell on from a D2C component, you have so much real estate in order to talk about the product and what it means and what it does and why it's great value for that consumer. When it comes to on shelf, that can look completely different, right? Because people are walking by the shelves. You have about 3 seconds to capture their attention. You have to have all the right words, icons, and key identifiers that are going to draw them in immediately for them to want to look at your product, pick it up, and potentially put it in their basket to purchase. So again, utilizing that opportunity to test and learn to see, okay, maybe my package was great being a minimalist package on direct to consumer platform because I had all of this, great creative information that supported it, right, through long form. But when it comes to the shelf, oh, you know what? I only said nut butter on the packaging, and I didn't really give exploratory information to consumers that are really figuring out what they want on shelf. Number 7, more flexibility. So local stores are often more open to trying new, unique products without requiring long contracts or strict compliance. So again, just a great opportunity for you to get in there, not have to sign a lengthy contract, right? And giving you opportunity to even understand if retail is for you. Maybe you have your products in stores, in retail stores, and you understand now what operations looks like, how transportation works, how you need to leverage both your maybe D2C model versus these local stores, and you make a decision that you don't even want to be in local stores. If you were in a bigger retail environment in which maybe you potentially signed a contract, a lengthy contract that had a lot of stipulations to it, if you decided to exit, there could be lots of costs associated with that for you to exit out early. If you're in local, you have that relationship that we talked about, right, with the store managers, and you have the opportunity to work through and talk through what you're feeling, what opportunities you want to potentially adjust, and how you want to move forward in a less costly way, in a less committed way. Number 8, lower costs. So you're going to avoid the hefty potential slotting fees that come with getting into bigger retail, chargebacks, let's talk about that, and promotional costs that mass retailers not only ask for, but in sometimes demand or require. So heavy slotting fees. So for those that don't know, slotting fees are a fee that some retailers charge just for you to have that space on shelf. And sometimes it's a one-time fee. Other retailers, it may be an annual fee, and that could get costly. Secondly, chargebacks. So chargebacks can be anything from a customer returning the product because they didn't like it, even though it's opened and it'll go back to you. A chargeback can look like theft in a retail store, and you as the vendor are still responsible for that and charged. Maybe you deliver a pallet to the retailer distribution center and the pallet is leaking everywhere because maybe the caps weren't put on properly. You're going to be charged not only to come pick up that pallet, but also the full cost of goods. So you're not going to get your money for the product, and then you're also going to be charged additional fees to take it back. So chargebacks can, again, come in various ways. You definitely need to review your contract when you're signing that relationship and partnership with a retailer. But these are some things that you can avoid when you're starting local. And you don't have to really focus on that or think about how it's going to be added to your bottom line as you're really just trying to determine how to gain more customers in that storefront. And then promotional costs. Again, promotions can be negotiated and talked through when it comes to local, but when it comes to bigger retailers, they may have requirements that you participate in specific promotions on a quarterly or annual basis. And of course, those promotions you pay for. So, when you think about it, it's just really good to start with local because you start to learn and form what it looks like to be in a retail store without having all of the additional charges, pressures, and really long-standing agreements that are going to be put in place once you're there. And you can kind of slowly just build up to be able to support all of those nuances and incremental spends. Direct consumer connection. So smaller retail settings lets you have opportunity. You can potentially do some demos, you can do tastings, you can have events, and you can educate. Especially if you have a product that really needs some education support around it, or really needs a consumer to trial and taste it before they buy. It's also a great place, I think, if you're doing all of those things, to get some content that you can put on social media. So even though you're selling in a local store, it doesn't mean that you can't use that to amplify awareness and sales across the country with your brand through social media. And then number 10, it's a foundation for scaling. I kind of talked about that earlier, but success in local store really gives you real sales data and case studies that you can use when you are pitching to mass retailers. So what a great opportunity in that pitch for you to talk about the performance that you've seen in that local store that you've been in. You can talk about what you've done when it comes to promotional standpoint that has performed. You can talk about the displays that you've put in the store and which ones have worked and which ones haven't, or the signage that you feel is important to sit alongside your product in order to really tell the consumer what your product is and why they should add it to their regimen or to their basket. Of course, you can get in a bigger retailer store having D2C sales. Of course you can, right? So many brands that are performing exceptionally well when it comes to online sales are getting into brick and mortar in a bigger and grander way right off the bat. This is just a great added data point for you to show and prove that, hey, I'm performing well when it comes to my online store, but I also know how to translate that into performance in brick and mortar. Because I will say, I've definitely seen evidence of brands performing exceptionally well on their website, but not understanding or knowing how to connect to that same demographic and consumer when it comes to being in store. Because again, in many cases, it's two different modes in which you talk to the consumer and get them to come into store to buy your product. So utilizing again that local environment, testing and learning, understand what's working and what's not when it comes to pricing, when it comes to your product packaging, what you are saying on your packaging, any displays that you feel are important. And then from an external standpoint, how you're driving that consumer into store. Are Facebook ads driving performance? And that's maybe something you have the opportunity to build upon. So even if you're performing well from a D2C model, you can still use that to ensure that retailers feel confident that you can perform when it comes to brick and mortar. So there you have it, the 10 advantages to going local and starting small as you build your brand and make it stronger for a bigger retail footprint. Hope you love this episode. Hope you got tons of value and you're using these tips on building your retail strategy and feeling confident in doing so. Until next time, see ya.